Hey guys, this is Simon from Fateless. Today we're going to be exploring what Fateless stands for. We're going to be exploring a new game, some of the kind of like early development conversations we're having, and also some of the pillars that we are going to stand by for this new game. It's really important to have a kind of like focal point. Are we ticking the boxes against what we set out as our kind of like challenge for building our first game? Yes or no? Well, this is where we get into exploring some of the details around what we're actually talking about and how we're going about building our game. Let's start with Fateless. And Fateless, you know, as a new company formed, we basically want to set a direction. You know, what do we want to stand by? And I kind of like, our mantra, if you like, is forging our fates together. And by together, that means with you guys. You know, we're really focused on making sure that we understand what our community want, and we want to make sure that we create amazing games that build communities. The reason why that's something which we think is absolutely like paramount to what we want to do is because most of our best experiences in gaming in the past were when we were part of a community rather than as a solo player. And I'm not saying that you need to go in and do a big raid with 30 other people to be part of a community. Sometimes it's just being in a well-formed clan that is organized, that talks and helps each other out. So it's a really important part of what Fateless do. We went into a kind of like a whiteboard room, I guess, and we started to talk about, you know, what values do we live by? What do we stand by at Fateless? And it kind of ties back into our original message, really. But we want to stand for entertainment. We want people to love the games that we create. That's like so important in what we're doing. It's not just a cash grab here. We want to make games that people absolutely love to play. The second one to call out here, which we kind of like all sign up to, and honestly, everyone in the team that you've seen so far, everyone in the Meet the Team sessions, if you've not watched those, you should go and watch those actually, because they give you a bit of a background in everybody that's joined Fateless so far, and we will continue to do those as more people join us. But high commitment. And that's not just saying we're going to work, you know, all the hours under the sun, all that type of stuff. It's more about when we're in the zone, when we're focused on Fateless, that is the focus. Yeah, we're focused on then bringing through, and I'll talk to you about the kind of the mood boards for the game in a second, but making sure that we're absolutely committed in the moment to giving it our all. And we've done that through IP discussions, we've done that through the investment rounds, and obviously we're now doing it in our game development sessions as well. And then the third pillar for us is originality. So, you know, we absolutely want to make sure that we're bringing something fresh to the market, even if it is built on a genre that already exists. We want to make sure that we put our stamp on it, and we come back to this point of creating amazing games that build communities. So let's talk about the first game then that Fateless are creating, and we're already kind of underway working with Magic Media. We're kind of like working through this type of board of what are the key features that we want to see in our game. And we kind of called out this before actually we had any video released about Fateless being out there. Before anything else happened, myself, Sham, and Dan talked about what do we want from our first game. It's going to be in a hero collector RPG style game. So what's the kind of fundamentals that we need to tick every time we're talking about making decisions? And there's three again. So we want our game to be epic. We want our game to be collectible or have collectible components. And we want it to be deep. And there's a few reasons for this. So epic really sort of stands out in terms of the visuals, in terms of the boss mechanics, in terms of the way you feel within the game. So it's more like a look and feel to the game. And I would say there's actually now some games out there in this genre specifically which do this well. So a game that's been around for a long time. You probably know me from this game at the moment, but Raid Shadow Legends, they've got epic boss encounters. They've got fantastic looking visuals for their characters, and actually they do this job really well. I'd say up until recently they're easily number one, but actually recently there's been a couple of games that have launched in this genre which start to do epic really well. So Watcher of Realms, which is a game that I've been like watching from the sidelines, I'm actually going to be covering really soon, is another game that does epic really well in terms of visuals of the characters, in terms of actually having a storyline to follow, in terms of cool boss fights. Yeah, so this is another game now which is coming out there, which we look to these games and say, how do we start to draw some of that feeling in the game that Fateless are going to create? Another area where I see Epic coming in is like memorable moments. Yeah, and if I take this moment here, anyone who's watched the Lord of the Rings trilogy, like what a fine set of films that is. There's moments in those films which define the films. For me, this is one of those moments, you know, Gandalf against the Balrog, the feeling of the moment and, you know, you shall not pass, that type of vibe. I will never forget that. Okay. And we want to try and bring some of that type of feeling into the game that we create. And there's been a number of these, by the way. So if I think about World of Warcraft bosses that I've fought over the years, there's just some bosses which stand out as real epic moments. You know, the Lich King being one. Things like Molten Core. There's just so many moments where the boss encounters were so much fun because of how epic they felt, you know, compared to what you've been doing on the kind of general grind in the game. So that epic feeling has to be in our game. Collectibles are a really important one for us as well. So, you know, we want for people to, and in fact, one of the reasons why we're working with a big IP is we want for people to literally look at the game and say, I definitely want to collect, obtain those heroes, or perhaps those gear sets, or those items, or those achievements. Yeah, there's a number of different ways that you can kind of look at collectible. We want people to be able to brag about what they've done in the game through the game. And that's something that's really important in the way we're setting up. But definitely having this kind of like collectible focus is really important in the game that we're creating. So I guess just to reference some of the different collectible games that are out there right now in this kind of like high fantasy genre, which a lot of you guys have kind of called out on the Discord. You know, we want that feeling almost like me as a 10-year-old lad when I first bought my Magic the Gathering packs. And I was there at the market with my cash, picking up a pack, hoping to improve my decks. Yeah, that's the type of feeling that we want. And I think one that transcends really well into this type of game. Games or genres like The Witcher, just so many different elements to The Witcher that perhaps we haven't seen yet in some of the series that are out there, but you do see it more in some of the other games like The Witcher 3. There's actually a vast universe of really collectible, iconic heroes, characters, enemies, villains. And, you know, another one which is kind of like, I mean, it's the most collectible game, I think, on the planet, maybe. I don't know. Anyway, the Warhammer 40,000 or the Old World, you know, there's just, again, so many iconic heroes, villains, teams, squads that you would want to be involved with. And this is the type of feeling that we want to bring in our first title on Fateless. A game that I never actually played, but has just been like all over my radar recently is actually RuneScape. I don't know how I didn't play this game, honestly, but RuneScape have almost made their own game, their own definition of a genre by having a really cool like achievements section in their game. And, you know, you can play for thousands of hours, literally just trying to unlock achievements and brag about what you've done. And again, that's the type of one of the elements we're talking about for being collectible in our game. So it's a really important element. The last one, the third one here, is deep. And what do we mean by that? Well, again, we want people that perhaps used to be MMO players that want to come and play our first title, that want to kind of scratch an itch for a game that they used to play but don't have the time to do it anymore. So we're talking about people that actively want to min-max gear. Yeah, actively want to try and create the best teams for certain content. You know, they want to go into new content and explore the depth of their roster and come up with cool and interesting teams to beat it. They want to make sure they're putting on different gear sets for different content. You know, that's where the deep element comes in, and it's fundamental to what we're doing in our first title. We do not want one team beats all content. It's boring. Okay, that's not interesting at all. We do not want like one gear set for one champion. Again, that's boring. We do not want like one set of masteries or, you know, whatever we're going to call it in our game, because, you know, that's just going to be the easy win. No. When we look to games like Path of Exile, we see huge kind of like trees of options for your characters. And again, we're using that type of inspiration to understand, well, what can we do? Deep does not necessarily mean complex. We want to make sure that the game, it's going to be a mobile game initially, moving on to PC. It needs to be playable for people that perhaps don't have that background, can get into the game and then build experience and, I guess, skill. So complex is not necessarily what we're looking for. We're just looking for depth of options, and basically we think that will improve the fun aspects. And I guess I'm not going to go through this whole kind of like mood board because this video would go on for a long time. In fact, we've already spent hours and hours going through all of these different elements, but I want to talk to you slightly about the core of what we're trying to build. So we definitely want for there to be elements where clans or guilds are really important, and for there to be a competitive element to clans. We want to make sure that dollars does not necessarily equal pay to win. It just speeds up the progress. And again, working with Magic Media, this is a really important element for what we're doing. We want for someone who's free to play to be able to compete with end game players that have spent money over time. Not to be able to get there. Basically, they will get there quicker than you. That's the main thought process here. And you know, one of the other kind of really big ones for us is that bosses are epic. Again, that epic feel, and they're scalable. And what we mean by that is if we launch new content, actually, we don't want you to be able to beat it day one. We want for you to have to work your way through gaining new items, new experience to eventually be able to beat that new content or those new bosses. And we want, again, obviously for bosses to be diverse, fun, etc. So hopefully that's an interesting little insider in terms of what we're doing so far at Fateless. I've been Simon from Fateless. We'll see you soon.